My name is Lena Harper, and I am 29 years old. The moment my mother lifted her wine glass that Thanksgiving, I knew she wasn't about to say grace. She was about to make me the entertainment. We were packed around my parents' dining table like we always were. Too many chairs, too much food, too many opinions. My mother, Marlene, stood up smiling like she was about to say something warm and proud. Instead, she said, "To my 29-year-old daughter who still can't afford rent." The table burst into laughter. Silverware clinked. Someone actually clapped. My father, Dale, leaned back and added, "We should have stopped at 2 kids." More laughter. Then my brother-in-law, Darren, made sure his voice carried. "Glad our kids won't turn out like her." That got the ugliest laugh of the night. The one that feels like a room choosing a winner. My older sister, Rachel, smiled in that tight way she used when she wanted to stay safe. My younger brother, Luke, stared at his plate. My aunt muttered something about tough love, and my uncle shook his head like I was a cautionary tale. I stared at my food because if I looked up too soon, they'd see what it did to me, and I refused to give them that satisfaction. I took one more bite, set down my fork, picked up my coat, and stood. My mother's smile twitched. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said, already rewriting the moment so she wouldn't have to own it. I looked around the room and said, calm enough to sound almost bored, "By Christmas, you'll all be begging me to answer." They laughed even harder. Dale actually wiped his eyes like he was delighted. Darren smirked. Marlene sat down like she had successfully kept the mood light. I walked out into the cold and didn't look back. When I got home, the anger hit in waves. Not yelling anger. Quiet anger. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that turns decisions into concrete. My phone buzzed within minutes. First Marlene, then Dale, then Rachel, then Luke, who hadn't defended me at the table but suddenly wanted to be the peacemaker now that the damage was done. I turned the phone face down and let it vibrate itself tired on the counter. The next morning, the voicemails arrived. Marlene's was syrupy and offended at the same time. "Lena, don't be ridiculous. It was a joke. Everybody was joking. Dale's was worse. You know how your mother gets. Don't make this into family drama." Rachel sounded annoyed. "Not sorry. You embarrassed Mom. You should apologize so we can move on." Move on. Meaning return to your place. Absorb the hit. Pretend it didn't bleed. That afternoon I went to work and buried myself in something that always made sense. I work in the city archives lab, down in the climate-controlled basement where fragile public records get repaired and digitized. I restore brittle ledgers, CAPS maps, document chain of custody, and help preserve the boring details that tell the truth when people try to rewrite history. My family always mocked that job. "So you play with old paper," Darren once said at a barbecue, laughing like he was clever. They never understood why I loved it. Damaged things can be repaired without pretending the damage never happened. Paper doesn't gaslight you. By Saturday, the messages from my family started shifting. Not into apologies, into blame. Their unity never lasted once the target stopped showing up. Luke texted, "Mom's blaming Darren for going too far." Rachel texted, "Dad says Uncle Glenn laughed too hard and made it look bad." Marlene texted, "You know your uncle always ruins things." They weren't sorry they hurt me. They were irritated the laughter might reflect badly on them. That night I sat alone in my apartment, reheating soup, and asked myself a question that felt like stepping into cold water. Why do they only talk to me when it's to correct me, mock me, or use me to relieve their own tension? Then something in me clicked. They didn't want me happy. They wanted me available. So I made a decision. I stopped trying to win a place at their table. I blocked the family group chat. I turned off red receipts. I picked up extra shifts at work. I started writing at night. The kind of writing I'd always been too scared to do under my own name. I wrote one essay, short and clean, titled, "When Your Family Needs You to Stay Small So Their Story Still Works." I didn't use names. I didn't mention Thanksgiving. I just wrote the truth in a way that didn't ask permission. I posted it on a small essay platform I'd never promoted. By Monday night, it had been shared hundreds of times. People I'd never met left comments that felt like tiny lifelines. I thought I was the only one. This sounds exactly like my family. I didn't feel crazy reading this. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen without having to perform. At work, I threw myself into a certification track my supervisor had been nudging me toward. There was an opening in January for a lead technician role. Better pay. Better benefits. Actual recognition. In my family, ambition was allowed for Rachel. Not for me. After Thanksgiving, I stopped listening to that. My best friend, Marin Blake? I noticed the shift before I even told her why. She came over with takeout and said, "They did it again. Didn't they?" I told her the toast. The laughter. Darren's comment. And the way Luke didn't say a word. Marin listened. Then asked the question nobody in my family ever asked me. What do you want now? Not what keeps peace. Not what makes Mom feel better. What do you want? I stared at my kitchen table and said it out loud for the first time. I want one holiday where I don't have to audition for basic respect. Marin nodded like that was the most normal desire in the world. Then build one, she said. I did. I kept writing. I kept working. I kept my distance. Then, on a gray Wednesday afternoon in early December, I got a call from an attorney named Evelyn Grant. Her voice was professional but careful, like she knew this conversation would change something. I represent the estate of your grandfather. Walter Harper, she said. There's a trust administration meeting next week. There are items your grandfather specifically directed me to discuss with you. With me, she emphasized. Not through your parents. My hands went cold inside my archive gloves. My grandfather had died in spring. I had spent weekends the year before helping him sort decades of business records from the old Harper hardware building he'd owned downtown. While everyone else fought over small sentimental items at the funeral, Grandpa asked me to help him label ledgers, scan deeds, and organize lease files. He used to say I had patience for history. What he meant was I was the only one who listened without checking my phone. That night I didn't post anything. I didn't call anyone. I just sat in my apartment and stared at my ceiling, thinking about Thanksgiving, thinking about how my mother laughed, thinking about how people show you what you're worth when no one's keeping score. If your family humiliates you, would you stay quiet and rebuild your life? Or confront them immediately? Comment. Rebuild or confront. The trust meeting was in a quiet law office downtown with fake greenery in the waiting room and a bowl of peppermints nobody touched. I almost didn't go. Not because I wasn't curious. Because I didn't want my family to turn it into another stage. When I walked into the conference room, they were already there. Marlene looked startled. Dale looked irritated. Rachel wouldn't meet my eyes. Luke looked like he wanted to disappear. Darren sat back with that half-smirk people wear when they think they're still above you. Even in a lawyer's office. Attorney Grant didn't waste time. Most of Grandpa's estate had been handled months earlier. But one major asset remained. The old Harper hardware building downtown. Leased to 3 small businesses, plus a reserve of wine attached to it. The building was placed in trust before your grandfather's death. She explained. The trustee is Lena. The room changed temperature. Dale let out a short laugh like it had to be a mistake. Marlene's eyes widened. Darren leaned forward. There has to be an error, he said. Attorney Grant slid a folder toward me. There is no error. Then she explained the part that made their faces shift from disbelief into fear. The trust generated rental income. There were no automatic disbursements to family members. The trustee had sole discretion. Grandpa had structured it that way on purpose. Dale tried to recover. Lena. Sweetheart. Obviously, we need to talk about this as a family. As a family. Meaning, hand us control. And we'll call it unity. Attorney Grant cleared her throat. Walter left a letter for Lena to read privately first. He did authorize me to summarize one statement for the record. She looked around the table, then read it calmly. Walter stated that he wanted the property managed by the one member of the family who has never confused cruelty with honesty. Darren's smirk died. Rachel went pale. Marlene started crying immediately. which would have moved me if I hadn't watched her use tears like a weapon my entire life. I didn't open Grandpa's letter until I was home. I made tea, sat at my little table, and unfolded pages written in his thick handwriting. He wrote that he saw more than I thought. He wrote that every family has one person expected to absorb the damage so everyone else can feel decent. He apologized for not stopping it sooner. He wrote that being underestimated had sharpened me, but it had also cost me peace, and he hoped this gift would buy some of that peace back. Then came the line that cracked something open in me. You are not required to save people who would not have saved your dignity. I cried then, not because of money, because someone finally named what happened to me without minimizing it. The next morning, the begging started. Dad, hey sweetheart, please pick up. I didn't mean any of that. Mom, crying. It was a joke. We'll always be family. Rachel, this is getting out of hand. We need to talk. Darren, who had never called me directly in his life. Can you at least hear us out? By the end of the day, my phone showed dozens of missed calls and a pile of voicemails. Respect arrived the moment the asset report did. I didn't answer. Rachel was the first one to try a different approach. Please meet me, she texted. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Neutral place. A diner halfway between our neighborhoods. Public enough to keep the conversation clean. Rachel looked terrible when she walked in. Not dramatic, terrible. Real terribly. Concealer over puffy eyes. Hair done too fast. Hands twisting in her lap like she was bracing for impact. We ordered coffee. We barely touched it. Rachel started with, I'm sorry. I said nothing. So she kept going. No. I mean it. I'm really sorry. Finally, she looked up. Mom is falling apart. That almost made me stand up. Rachel, I said quietly, if this is about managing Mom's feelings, I'm done. She flinched, then nodded. Okay. Fair. She took a breath. Then I'll tell you the truth. My parents had known for months that Grandpa's building might be the only thing standing between them and serious financial fallout. Dad assumed he would inherit control automatically. Darren pushed the Thanksgiving joke because he was angry and scared and wanted someone lower in the family hierarchy to absorb the tension. Mom had been drinking before dinner and decided humiliating me would lighten the mood. Rachel admitted she laughed because when our mother turns on someone else, the safest place to stand is beside her. Then she said the part that proved she wasn't just performing regret. Mom told me to come here. She whispered. She said if I didn't fix this with you, I shouldn't expect help from them when the boutique closes. There it was. The system in one sentence. Loyalty purchased with fear. Affection rationed out based on usefulness. Even now, Mom was still turning daughters into bargaining chips. I asked Rachel the only question that mattered. If Grandpa hadn't made me trustee, would any of you be apologizing right now? Rachel's silence answered before she did. Then she whispered, not like this. That hurt more than the laughter. Not because I didn't know it. Because hearing it out loud made denial impossible. If you found out your family only apologized when money was on the line, would you help anyway? Or hold your ground? Comment. Help or hold. I didn't yell at her. I didn't punish her either. I just said, tell the truth. Then live differently. In the weeks that followed, the requests got less disguised. Dad sent numbers. Mom sent Bible verses. Darren tried to explain business cash flow like I was an investor he could charm. Luke sent one message that made my throat tighten. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I didn't know how. It was late. But it was real. I met with Attorney Grant and went over my responsibilities. She was blunt in a gentle way. I was obligated to act in the trust's best interest, not in the emotional interest of adults who had mistaken access for entitlement. Grandpa structured it like that on purpose. I decided the trust would stay stable. The building would stay leased. The reserve would be managed responsibly. There would be no cash rescue drops to fix adults' poor planning, especially adults who laughed while I was being humiliated. 3 days before Christmas, my mother sent a message that looked like someone coached her. We would appreciate one conversation. No pressure. Just to hear you. I replied with terms. Daytime. 1 hour. No alcohol. No surprise guests. No talk about getting money. Any trust discussions go through Attorney Grant. I went because I wanted something they had never given me. A room where the truth had to stay in the air after it was spoken. When I walked in, nobody was holding a drink. Luke was there, quiet and pale. Rachel was there without Darren. Even my parents looked like they were trying, which would have been touching if it didn't take fear to produce it. My mother started crying immediately. "I'm sorry," she said before I even took off my coat. For the first few minutes, they apologized in vague, sweeping language that made pain sound like weather. Mistakes were made. Things got out of hand. Everyone was stressed, so I stopped it. "No," I said. "Say what happened." Silence. I looked at my mother. "What did you say at Thanksgiving?" Her face crumpled. "Lena," I said. "Say it." She repeated the toast back to me, out loud, without laughter to cushion it. It sounded uglier than she remembered. I looked at my father. "What did you add?" He stared at the carpet, then muttered, "We should have stopped at 2 kids." I turned to Rachel. "What did Darren say?" Rachel shut her eyes. "That he was glad his kids wouldn't turn out like you." Luke started crying. Actual tears. I should have said something. He whispered. That was the first clean truth spoken in that house in years. My mother tried to soften it. "We never meant for you to leave us over one dinner." "This isn't about one dinner," I said. "It's about a lifetime of teaching me that my value here was how well I tolerated disrespect." Then my father made his mistake. "So what now?" he asked. "Are you really going to punish us over that building?" There it was. Still transactional. Still centered on what he wanted. I pulled out a copy of Grandpa's letter. The one line I chose to share. I read it aloud. "You are not required to save people who would not have saved your dignity." When I finished, the room went quiet in a way that finally felt honest. "I am not distributing trust funds to anyone," I said. "Not now." My mother sobbed. My father paced. Rachel looked like she was watching a family myth collapse. Then my mother said, "If you cut us off, I don't even know what reason I have to celebrate Christmas." The old version of me would have folded. The old version of me would have comforted the person who hurt her. The new version of me had finally learned the difference between compassion and surrender. Then maybe this is the year you learn the difference between celebration and performance. I said. I stood, put my coat on, and gave them the only boundaries I was willing to offer. If they wanted a relationship with me, it would have nothing to do with the trust. It would start with accountability. No jokes about my money, my job, my apartment, my life. No using me as the target at gatherings. No calling me too sensitive when I objected. If it happened again, I would leave immediately. Rachel nodded. Luke nodded. My father said nothing. My mother whispered, "Please don't go." I looked at her and said, "I'm already gone from the version of this family that needed me to stay small. What happens next is up to you." Then I left. Christmas Eve. I stayed home. A year earlier. That would have sounded tragic. It felt peaceful now. I made baked ziti from a recipe Marin texted me. I burned the first batch of garlic bread because I got distracted answering comments under my latest essay. I sat on my couch wearing thick socks while my little tree blinked in the corner. It wasn't a perfect Christmas. It was a quiet one. Quiet, I learned, is not the same as lonely. If you want more real stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next one will hit even harder.